Well, hello, welcome back. It's good to have you. This is Janine Marie. Today we're going to talk about things in the spirit. And I guess in this world, primarily when we talk about spiritual things, at least out there in the general population, we call it the paranormal. And quite honestly, things that are in the spirit are a lot more normal than they are paranormal. Paranormal is really in this body because it's more difficult in this body than it is in spirit. And I've learned this by studying qhht and metaphysics. So, through qhht, quantum healing hypnosis technique, I have learned that there is life between lives, and that is life in the spirit. And according to Dolores Cannon, who has conducted thousands and thousands of cases, and past life regressions, in between life regressions, that there is a spirit life, and that spirit life is spectacular. There is so much that goes on during that time. We don't just float around and sit on the clouds the rest of our eternal existence, because we are eternal beings, and we just seem to think because we're in this body, it's limited. But there's another message that is just really coming through, and I don't know who this is for, but the message is there is a time and a season for all things. And just because the timing does not seem right, or just because something seems like it's a no, don't get discouraged. If you have an intuitive feeling, you have an intuitive thought that comes to you, and you know that a specific thing is going to occur in your life or happen for you in your life, don't get discouraged, because timing is everything, and the right time can make all the difference in the world. Remember that the caterpillar weaves that cocoon, and in the deep darkness, it transforms into a butterfly, and it chips through that cocoon and begins to fly. But can you imagine if it, is taken out of the cocoon too early? It is crippled, and the idea that's the caterpillar that turns into the butterfly is a crippled idea. So the ideas that are coming across in your life, please do not neglect the stream of things that you need to do in order to get to that point, or required to do. Don't take shortcuts in life. That's another message. Do not take shortcuts, because it actually chops off that element of timing, and timing can be blissful in this life. So there's my little side teaching. Not really something I was going to say in this video, but profound for some people. Hope that's for you, and I hope that it's helped you. We're going to talk about when my father was here on the planet and in body, and when he was in his 50s, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. My father was a smoker for the good portion of his life. He did quit at one point, but I'm not really sure if he took it back up again or not. But he was diagnosed with lung cancer, and he was given 2 weeks to live. Now, my father was a very adamant, stubborn man. Love him to pieces, but he had his ideas, and his ideas were important to him. And he, decided that he was not going to die in 2 weeks, that he was staying in this body. There were reasons for him to stay here, and he felt that it was very important that he does. And he was given treatment for the cancer. Unfortunately, he did have a tumor that was very close to the carotid artery, and that tumor shrank during the course of radiation. He prolonged life, he and medical science prolonged life for 2 years. So he went from 2 weeks to 2 years. And I can see, at least for my part, that one of the reasons he really wanted was to see a grandson being born, and I became pregnant during the time that he was still going through some of his treatment. And at one point he was considered cancer-free, and that was a joyous moment for him, celebratory moment. And so I ended up pregnant, and Dad started to become sick and sicker and sicker again. And it seemed at this point it was not going to be possible to go through treatment again. So the ultimate that was going to happen, he was prepared for. He knew how he was going to pass away and what that was going to be like. And, you know, honestly, if I had that told to me, that those particular things that were told to me, I don't know how I would handle it. But he was a very strong man, and I was 9 months pregnant during the very end of his life in this body, or in his body. And he wanted to know beyond anything that my child was going to be another grandson. It had to be another grandson. There are a lot of girls in my family and in our lineage. I did have a son prior to that, but I had a couple of girls as well. And I am one of 2 girls in my parents' life, and the youngest of 2 girls. And my father never had a chance to have a son, which is something that he wanted, but he wanted to make sure it was a grandson that I was birthing in his mind, I guess, for him. So he decided he was going to wait and not, leave his body, stubborn as he was, and he was going to wait to make sure that that baby inside of me was a grandson. And lo and behold, yes, I gave birth, and I gave birth to my baby boy, and he was ecstatic. He just loved the fact that I had another boy, and he loved my girls too. I mean, he just adored all of his grandchildren. I know my sister had a little girl, and he just adored her as well. But just absolutely thrilled. And 3 weeks after my son was born, I was still recuperating. My father passed away. And when I say passed away, he left his body, but I'm sure he found very quickly that when he left his body, there was more life in spirit than there ever was in his body. And I'm sure that after going through, the treatments and going through the cancer issue, he was probably a little relieved. It was hard for a lot of the rest of us, but, I'm sure he was relieved. But it begged the question for me, even though I was kind of raised in organized religion. And when I say raised, it was like I was spiritually pulled on my own to the highest degree. My mom was Catholic, so I had a lot of that background. And through organized religion, I knew that there was a life after this life. But a lot of the things that I was told that was ingrained in me is that if we're not a good girl, if we're not a good boy, we might just end up in the wrong place after we die. Now, can you imagine? That puts a lot of fear in a little child, and it puts a lot of fear in adults too. It really does. And I don't believe we should live in that fear. And I started to think, is there really life after this human existence? Do we really live in spirit even after all that I thought that I know or knew? Do we live in spirit, or does this body just die and our soul disintegrates with the body? And I started to get kind of depressed about that. And I really needed to search and find out. And it's like my father sensed some of my, not just grieving, but grievous feelings, And one night I found myself going to bed, and I was feeling a little bit off, but I went to bed and covered up under the covers and turned to the side. I like to look to the outside of the bed and, you know, out towards the floor. It makes me feel like I have more air. I don't know. It's just a thing, you know. And I was looking at the floor, I guess, and I was still awake, but all of a sudden I just closed my eyes and I felt these goosebumps or chill bumps, or a lot of people call them truth bumps, all over my body. There was like a flush of kind of a chill through my body, but it wasn't a bad feeling. It was actually a very good feeling. And it was like kind of something that made me shiver. And I opened my eyes, and in the darkness, there was kind of a faint light next to me, and the stature of what I believe to be a man in that second. And that man had on a blue shirt. It was somewhat flowered looking, but not really flowers. It was a little swirled, and it was blue. It was just beautiful. And just from the shirt, I determined it was a man. Now, my dad was 6 foot tall, a little bit more maybe. And so he was a very, you know, large man. Not real large as far as maybe width, but definitely height. And so there I was staring at this, kind of blinking, wondering, what is that, you know, and why am I seeing that? And it couldn't be anything coming through the blinds or anything like that. It had definite shape. And I suddenly heard not an audible voice to my ears, but a voice inside of my head, inside of my being. And a spirit voice, if you know anything about hearing that, has kind of a vibration, because we're all energy, we're all vibration. And the vibration of the voice went through my body as well. And what the male voice said was, you want to know what heaven is like? It's like warm chocolate cake. And then I kind of blinked my eyes, and that vision was gone. And I thought to myself, warm chocolate cake. You know, one thing that I did for my dad is, when I was younger, I used to bake for him. I used to cook for him. I made crepes for him. I made breakfast. I made French toast, and I made cake. He liked warm cake. He really did. And it was something that my children loved as well. Every birthday I made a sheet cake when one of my children had a birthday. And so it happened quite often, because I had 5 children. And during the time that they had their birthdays, they couldn't wait. They wanted to come home from school. They couldn't wait. They wanted to have some warm cake right out of the oven. So I waited until they were home and made sure that that cake came out of the oven. It was warm, it was chocolate, and you know, the icing would just spread all over it, and it would just melt everywhere and just taste so good. So I knew it had to be something that was my father. I know nothing else, no one else, no other spirit would tell me that. And I thought about lava cake for some reason. You know, it just has this wonderful melty chocolate all over that comes from the top and drips down the bottom. But warm chocolate cake was something that he would have told me. And what he was saying, and I've no doubt at this point that that was him, his spirit, what he was saying is, that's what it's like to be out of your body. It's yummy, it's good, it's warm, it's tasty. It makes you just want to run for it. It's great. Don't fear death. Don't fear life after life. In other words, death of the body. Don't be afraid, because it's heaven, and it's like warm chocolate cake. Now, in my belief, there really isn't a heaven or a hell. There is a heavenly sense of being in bliss when we're in spirit. But if what you want to expect when you pass from this body is hell, that's what you're going to experience, but not for very long, because we just don't have a God that is a God of ultimate love that's going to choose a certain amount of people and make them suffer eternally the rest of their eternal life and their soul be in anguish. That's not our loving creator. That's not our loving existence. That's not our higher existence. What would life be if we thought every single thing that we did might be a mistake that sent us to the wrong place? What a fearful way to live. Now, you can disagree with me if you want to. That's absolutely fine. You can leave your body and experience that in the afterlife because it's what you expect. But it's not something you're going to maintain or be maintained for you. The afterlife is a place to learn, to understand, to be joyous with your soul group, to meet once again, to be in that highest place for your soul to recover from maybe trauma. The afterlife is not anything to fear. And what all of the teaching, including some of the spiritual things that I've gone through and experienced myself, has made me not afraid of death, because I really was for a long time. And even after my daughter recently passed away, that fear sort of came back again. And I needed to be recalibrated. And it's like higher guidance knew that. So qhht came into my life. And I mean, it came into my life. I did not seek it because I didn't know what it was. I had to figure it out. It came to me. So I hope that this has been inspiring to you. I know it's not a ghost story. It's not meant to be that way. When my daughter was passing away, I really, truly believe I was visited by my grandfather, and it was a wonderful surprise and a difficult one as well. And those kind of things happen to me quite often, but we'll get to that at another time. I just wanted to encourage you that you don't have anything to fear. Live life to the fullest. And remember, while you're living, there is a time and a season for all things. Many blessings to you. Namaste. I am so loving you from here. And I'll talk to you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.